Kansas State professor calls Republicans a death cult. Was this before or after lecturing his students about the joys of Democratic-sponsored abortion and euthanasia? I'm Dr. Duke, she's Katie, and this is the Dr. Duke Show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Duke Show, the only program that keeps you educated on the craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. Today we start in Kansas, where a professor says Republicans are a death cult, asking why nobody has developed an app to track these plague spreaders. Quite literally, these are the professors of tolerance, Katie.
Clearly they are. Well, the professor at Kansas State University is named Philip Nell. That name alone.
Take a look at his picture, Mike. Show us his picture.
I mean,
there's the walking advertisement for tolerance,
yes,
love, and inclusivity.
And of course, he is an English professor because there's only a couple options. It's either English professor, sociology.
I got 4 guys in my department right now who looks just like that.
This is true. So he took to the Twitters because apparently he wanted to get into it on the social media because that's basically what they do. And he actually says that Republicans are part of a death cult. And he can't imagine and understand why there hasn't been an app to track Republicans wherever they go so that you can control these plague spreaders, as you alluded to there.
Think of the outrage if we just substituted, because 100 years ago we would have, Jew for the name Republican.
Let's
see.
Go.
A professor at Kansas State University said the Jews are part of a death cult and asked why no one has yet developed an app to track Jews who he calls plague spreaders. Is that not right? Is that not a page out of our anti-Semitic racist past? But again, the absolute parallel is lost on this woke punk.
Of course. Well, his actual tweet says, local branch of death cult, a.k.a. the Kansas GOP, votes to exempt churches from quarantine rules, endangering the lives of us all. This leads me to a serious question. Ooh.
Yeah, and how about this serious question?
What's the next? I want to read part 2, though.
The serious question, it's about the app, isn't it?
Well, he's got to go to tweet 2.
Lay it on us.
Has anyone developed an app to track Republicans and other plague spreaders? I want to know which people and which businesses to avoid. This is a serious question. Rather than avoiding all local businesses, I want to only avoid those owned by or employing fans of contagion.
And what if we were to say China?
Oh,
yeah, what if we put the word... Now, again, he's being smug here, right?
Yeah,
he's trying to teach us with sarcasm.
This is being serious.
But again, put the words China in there and watch how he would react.
Exactly.
Right? The origin of the virus, which we got to stay away from Chinese businesses, right? But again, notice the irony. That which he mocks, he has no problem doing for his own sake here, right? The whole thing is, it's just a little bit too cutesy.
Yeah, well, and he has another tweet where he demands that the government release a list of virus spreaders and the virus adjacent. Now, this professor, you look him up. What does he do in the English department? You're kind of like, okay, well, let's get to know the guy.
Can I take a guess?
You can take a guess.
It's got to have something to do with gender studies.
Children's literature.
Children's literature. But he's not gender. Okay.
Vanderbilt educated professor specializes in children's literature and has been widely published with works titled Dr. Seuss, an American Icon. You would think, but you know what that's actually about. And J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter novels, A Reader's Guide. Some of his works have approached children's books through a social justice lens.
There it is.
Notable among them was Was the Cat in the Hat Black? The hidden racism of children's literature. And the need for diverse books.
Yeah, so in other words, this guy is children's literature.
I was being a little smug there, too.
And you were doing the same sarcastic. I saw what you did. I got that. The same sarcastic way of presenting you were doing, he was doing. But this guy, the idea that the churches are open, right? That's the big galling thing to him.
It is.
The anti-Christianity of the universities may be the most galling thing about them. And, the fact that this would be the same guy who would demand abortion clinics stay open, right?
Oh, sure.
It's okay to go abort your baby during the shutdown, right? Federal judges have said so. But the idea that you would worship the creator God of the universe who is responsible for those babies, that's a big never.
He's also bemoaned in various periodicals and whatnot. Any book that did a biography on Trump where they actually put not just the bad things, but the good things, so the balance. He bemoaned that they did a balanced biography about Donald Trump's
because
life.
a balanced biography contributes to the hate. So in other words, only show him as mean and evil, nothing positive, or else you're complicit with his evil agenda. But he's not the only professor spouting off.
Oh no, we have more. We have an atheist Texas professor who's spouting off. At the end of March, Richard Wigman's J.F. Busey Chair professor at Texas Tech University emailed his whole physics department colleagues, basically outlining his predictions of the effects of COVID-19, as well as what he says about President Donald Trump's handling of the global pandemic. How is the president doing? What is it that he decided to say?
In that way, we will cross the 10,000 death line next weekend, Wigman wrote. He suggests that Trump is downplaying the situation by explaining that the pandemic equals the sum of casualties of 9/11, the Iraq wars, and Afghanistan combined. He says Trump is brushing it off when the president says 1 week later the whole thing will be over. And get to the money quote, Katie.
The email continued towards the end saying that he gives himself personally, when he talked about, I give myself a grade of 10 out of 10 for the way the situation has been handled. When Trump said that, then Wigman's says the president is number 45's words with these bullet points. He says, I am personally an atheist. But if number 45 would die as a result of the virus, I might reconsider.
Can you imagine calling Obama 44? How you would be railed upon for enumerating his personhood away? But with 40, I'd be okay with it. The only thing that would get me to believe in God, says Wigman, is if Trump died from the coronavirus. Him and Nell, these guys are almost medieval in their childishness and their hypocrisy.
Yeah, I don't understand. He's a physics professor. Why? Why? Just why? Physics
demands it.
Well, coming up next, a professor at North Texas University is fired for calling out microaggressions on campus. At the University of North Texas, Nathaniel Hires is a full-time professor, and he claims in a lawsuit that he's being represented by the Alliance Defending Freedom, this lawsuit that his spring contract was rescinded without any notice because he made a joke. So the story goes that he disagreed with some flyers that were going around basically throughout the different classrooms. And these flyers discussed microaggressions, and so he put the flyer on a chalkboard, and then he drew an arrow down to the piece of paper and wrote, "Please don't leave garbage lying around." So the university engaged in content and viewpoint-based discrimination and attempted to compel speech from him. This is his claim. So these flyers actually come from the University of New Hampshire's advanced program, which is to support faculty in STEM disciplines, which is funded by the National Science Foundation. And the first 2 pages of this focus on gender microaggressions. So all he did was take this flyer, put it onto the chalkboard, and say, please don't leave your garbage lying around. And that's a microaggression right there.
Yeah, I mean, this is shocking and not surprising, but it's still shocking that the fact that now he's not a tenured professor. He may be a full-time professor, as the story tells us, but if he were tenured, they would not have been able to fire him for this. And the fact that a university cannot fire a tenured professor for this, but could fire a on-contract professor, it's shameful for the part of the university, right? So free speech somehow, talk about elitism. These universities that pretend that they're all social and all about inclusivity and equity, they're the only places in the world where you can get tenure, where you can get a job and never get fired after 6 years, right? So here you are in your absolute elitism, what you would have been forced to allow a tenured professor to get away with. The minute that this guy who doesn't have tenure says it, you make sure you get rid of him. And it never happens to people like our last 2 professors, Wigman or Nels. It never would happen to them. There's never anything too liberal you can say. Both of those guys had tenure, so they weren't going anywhere anyway. But this guy who doesn't have tenure simply calls out the legitimacy of microaggressions for the BS that they are, I would add.
And it's a joke. It's not. He didn't do anything to the flyers. He set it onto the chalkboard and drew an arrow, and he said, please, he was even polite, please don't leave your garbage lying around. Now, what's interesting about it is the flyers had some phrases, and those are about microaggressions too, including propagate the myth of meritocracy and promote he's talking about certain microaggressions that propagate the myth of meritocracy and promote colorblindness. Now, some of these phrases that they put on there include America is a melting pot, or
these are
the
let's be clear.
microaggressions.
These are considered
Yes.
racist statements
Yes.
now. Wait, before you go forward, this is important, right? Before we move forward, to believe that meritocracy exists, to believe that we should give people benefits based on what they merit, that's racist. And the idea that people are colorblind, that we should not see color, we should treat people as people, not as races, that's racist too now.
The phrase I like is the fact that it's the phrase, I believe the most qualified person should get the job.
That's racist.
And we're talking about, I don't know anything about Nathaniel Hires in terms of his, but
Can we just say it's BS?
It is BS.
Nate, you are 100% correct. This is all BS lies, right? To say America is a land of opportunity is racist. But excuse me, to all the social justice warriors who are offended by this, by the administration of this ridiculous university, why do immigrants keep flocking here? Why do they risk life and limb to come to this country? Why are people in Cuba risking shark-infested waters to sail over here in bathtubs if there is no opportunity here? Exactly. What are you talking? This is Marxist dialectic 101. Even when the truth is black and white right in front of you, you have to lie about it to preserve the worldview.
And you know how this happens when teachers basically get snitched on. I don't know if it was one person in the class or somehow, but word got around super quick because he immediately almost got a response from the math department chairman, Ralph Schmidt. He's a named defendant, by the way, in this lawsuit. And he allegedly told Hires that his response to the flyer was stupid and cowardly, and that in the week following, 1 week later, he was fired. Schmidt fired him. Mm-hmm. So that's the age we live in right now on the college campus.
According to these liberal idiots, America's a melting pot, saying that you believe the most qualified person should get the job, saying that America's a land of opportunity. These phrases, quote, target persons based solely upon their marginalized group membership. How? How is saying America is a land of opportunity targeting specific groups based on their organization? I guess non-Americans. I guess.
I think these flyers are giving you these microaggressions. The microaggression flyers about the microaggressions are making you microaggress too.
Another point from the flyer. It is sexist, heterosexist, to be forced to choose male or female when completing basic forms. And this is not the English department. This is the math department.
Yep.
Right? So, or something that has underlying scientific rationality behind it. It is discriminatory to require people to choose male or female as a biological gender.
Still to come, an Ivy League college has become the first in its ranks to officially drop the SAT-ACT requirement due to COVID-19. We'll discuss what, if anything, this actually means. So we've already reported on various universities dropping the ACT or SAT requirement because of the whole COVID-19 and everything happening. But now the first Ivy League has announced it. And who would that be? Cornell. Ever heard of it?
The Big Red. That's a big red bobblehead bear. That's a big red bear.
So Cornell is claiming to temporarily exempt new applicants from submitting an SAT score or an ACT score for admission because of the whole coronavirus thing. So they released a statement saying the SARS-CoV-2 pandemic emergency has led to many SAT and ACT administration cancellations. Due to this extraordinary circumstance, students seeking to enroll at Cornell University, ever heard of it, beginning in August 2021, can submit their applications without including the results from ACT or SAT exams.
You know, if it weren't for Cornell, we wouldn't have modern cabbage. You know that, right? Not in its modern forms, just so you know.
This is true. And
can I tell you a dirty little secret here? You know, the dirty little secret is that this has nothing to do with the virus. I mean, the virus made it impossible for a lot of kids to take the test, so therefore they canceled it. But the SAT and the ACT are on the way out anyway. You had mentioned a number of schools who've already gotten rid of them. And why? Because they're not inclusive. This is literally what they're doing. Look, you're giving kids standardized tests to determine whether or not they merit getting into college. What did you just see from the last story? Merit is a racist statement. If you base college admissions on those kids who are best prepared for college, you're a bigot. So why are the SAT and the ACT going away? Because they, by definition, are exclusive tests. They don't measure social justice bona fides. They don't measure the pigment in your skin or the alternative people you sleep with. So therefore, they don't count as inclusive. So, and you know, I gotta say, I'm glad they're going away, not for this reason, but I'm glad they're going away. The tests are kind of stupid. The way we've subordinated K through 12 education to these ridiculous, utterly unhelpful tests is destroying further what little kids are already learning. So good riddance to the ACT and the SAT. But the reason, don't you think for 1 second, this has anything to do with anything else, but getting more kids into colleges who really aren't academically prepared. More minority kids, more transgender kids, more queer kids, more kids in the name of diversity. And what could be more diverse at a college? Look, before this, up until 10, 20 years ago, every kid at college was college ready. Now, to be truly inclusive, we have to include the barely literate. That's a category that have to be included or we're not being inclusive.
Now, Cornell did say that overall, they are not adopting a test optional admission policy. It's not permanent. It's a one-year thing. However, let's look at what else they said. While submitting test scores is optional for the near future, Cornell is maintaining that submitting scores may still matter in the admissions process. The school said the results will serve as a meaningful differentiator for students who live in areas where testing will be offered and for students who have not faced economic hardship from the pandemic. I was wondering to see how long it would take you before you said,
Bingo, right? So economic hardship is now a category. It's economic hardship or racial diversity or alternative sexual preference. These are, when you're filling out a college application, they are more important than class rank, than SAT score, or than your overall GPA.
According to the university, we can't predefine in absolute comprehensive terms what economic or personal disruptions will look like, nor will we require any students to justify their reasons for not submitting test results. Instead, we expect to partner with applicants and their advocates throughout the reading period.
And their advocates, the social justice warriors. Yep.
Let me get through. Aiming to arrive at a reasonable and well-informed understanding of each applicant's circumstances. All right, go.
This story gets me going. Let me just say this too. The changing complexion of the universities is here to stay. They are not about higher ed. They are about equity ed, which means by definition, if you're going to get to where they want to get, equity in education, not letting the highest achievers at the college level move forward, then you're going to have to, by definition, dumb the standards down. You're dumbing down the admission requirements. You're dumbing down the grades. How many schools have we seen telling kids that you can pick your own grade, or we're going to non-damage grading, where whatever happens at the end of the semester, you'll at least get a passing grade. College isn't college anymore. It's high school, and you're paying for it.
Cornell, more like core not. We're going to wrap things up with some real education featuring C.S. Lewis's instant classic, Mere Christianity. We have a return of the great Clive Staples Lewis, C.S. Lewis, the Englishman of many talents. We talked about him last week, and now while he was a professor of English literature at Oxford and Cambridge, he was also a lay theologian, and so he wrote extensively on his Christian faith, which was a faith he actually came to while he was at Oxford, and in 1952 he published Mere Christianity.
And Mere Christianity is really a composite book. It's a book that contains many of his thoughts that he'd expressed earlier on Christianity. But, the thing is that he's so rich and so deep, Lewis, when he talks about Christianity. It almost takes a convert sometimes, somebody who didn't grow up with the faith. Sometimes it takes a convert, particularly an intellectual convert, to be able to articulate aspects of the faith that those of us who've always been faithful, we don't see. And Lewis does this fantastically. I mean, go read Mere Christianity. Yes. I urge you to do so. But we just take in one sentence.
That's all you've taken.
You can just take a sentence at a time from this great book, and you can spend minutes and minutes and minutes discussing them. The quote from Mere Christianity we want to focus on today. Wickedness, Lewis writes, wickedness, when you examine it, turns out to be the pursuit of some good in the wrong way. Think about everything we've talked about in the show so far. We talked about microaggressions and the idea that we're going to that what's words like America's a land of opportunity, that's racist. Mm-hmm. The idea that you could pull yourself up for your bootstraps, right? Yep. Remember how AOC got angry about that? Yeah. All of this is just garbage. All this focus on race, class, and gender from the progressive left. What's going on with the COVID virus, right? The radical shutdown of America in fear, not in hope, right? We're going to grind in a first world economy to a screeching halt. because we're afraid that somebody might get sick. Lewis here, I think, is onto something. I think this is a big lesson for the progressive left. Wickedness, he says, when you examine it, is very often the pursuit of some good, racial equality or health or progressive values, some good, but in the wrong way, right? This is what progressives always have done, right? Pursuing their version of truth by becoming wicked, right? Fixing discrimination in our schools by discriminating, right? Condemning discrimination, then teaching our kids that everybody's white privileged or toxically male, right? The pursuit of goodness, wickedness is the pursuit of a good idea, equality, inclusion, diversity, through ways and means that are themselves discriminatory. I don't know. He wasn't particularly talking about modern progressive values when he was writing Mere Christianity, but he hit the nail on the head about a much bigger phenomenon.
And you can see that in our everyday lives as we're going. We all like to at least believe that what we're doing is right and just and always the right thing to do. But too often, and as we see the progressive movement and everything, they get so tunnel visioned and thinking that whatever it is that they're doing is the right thing, that no other ways can be proper. But that morphs them into becoming that wickedness, and it eats at them, and they can't see anything else around them to know what the truth is. And so they get lost, and then it turns out to be exactly the wrong way. And that's what we're seeing in the progressive cause, is because they don't know what is actually happening around them, because they're so just focused on what they've been told that they can't see anything around it.
Well, the cult of progressivism lacks humility, right?
This is true.
That only they know, right? Only their political worldview informs science, right? So you got these same progressives who are using they call themselves the party of science, right? And yet they're endorsing all of this biology is made up garbage, right? Gender and sex or whatever you say you are.
Exactly.
And anybody, but here's the thing: when does it become wicked? When does the pursuit for the progressives? When does the pursuit of what they consider good, tolerance or equity, it becomes wicked when you feel you're so right, as you just said, that you are justified in taking away the rights and liberties of other people. In this COVID-19 situation, right? And I'm talking about the American government generally here now, and we don't have necessarily a progressive government now. But progressives in our culture, too, have made the same argument. Anybody who violates the curfew or the quarantine have to arrest them, right? We have a mom in Idaho being arrested in front of her little children, and those kids were taken to custody because she was in a park by herself with those kids. This is what's the danger of big government ideas, too. When in the name of, quote, safety, you can utterly eradicate the rights and liberties of other people, unqualified, in an unqualified way, it's a big problem.
Well, it looks like we did make it through at least half of this week, so huzzah to that. As always, you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and if you have a question for our Friday Q&A, visit freedomproject.com/askduke or send us a nice message on social media. Now, before we go, we must wrap up with the fun fact of the day. And something as American as apple pie isn't really true, because apple pie and apples are not native to America. The first apples actually came from Asia, and the first apple pie is from England. And so now it all makes sense.
There were also no apples in the Garden of Eden, apparently, right? It was not an apple that Adam and Eve fell with. Mind blown. For Freedom Project Media, I'm Dr. Duke, she's Katie. Until next time, stay educated, my friends.